And in an ideal way, the simulation is also similar. What you see here is a capsulorhexis, the opening of the capsule. That's the first step of cataract surgery. You open the capsule, remove the cataract, the lens, insert an artificial lens, and that's the cataract surgery. This first step is crucial because if you don't create a circular opening, this opening will not be stable and might not hold the lens, so that when you inject the artificial lens, it might destroy the capsule that's still there, and then you get the lens might drop onto the retina, and all the subsequent surgery might get very ugly. And you see here on the right, again, the real surgery. On the left, what you see in the stereo microscope. And I'm a bit proud of that. We presented that last year, and it was the first time for me that I had to look twice to see what is reality and what is simulation. You still see that the simulation is a bit cleaner than the reality. The real surgeon is here also a bit faster than the trainee here. But the tissue behavior is quite similar in a qualitative way. It won't be identical. That's not our aim. We don't load patient-specific data into the simulator, but we have generic patients. But it's close enough to provide for an efficient training. Yeah, this opening is not perfectly round. It's a bit decentrated. This is more in the center, but also not perfect. Both surgeons, I think, can still improve a bit on their technique. We have 3 core competencies at our company. I think the one is high-end simulation. You just saw that. The problem here is that we have to compute everything in a very short time. You have around 20 milliseconds to react to an action of a surgeon to get the physically right answer to this action. We provide hardware and sensor systems because we have to know what does the surgeon do in the machine. Therefore, we have to measure his movements of the instruments, for example. We do that mostly with cameras that observe what the surgeon is doing. And, which is an important thing, we provide educational solutions that integrate our simulators into a standard curriculum for teaching surgery. Yeah, the high-end simulations, you saw an example. Here's another one, the injection of an artificial lens. That's a retina detachment. This is an ILM peeling in retina, and this is, I think, otitis media from the otoscope simulator. This is about the hardware and sensor systems. This is a direct ophthalmoscope that is marked with infrared LEDs, and from this pattern our cameras can detect what the examiner is doing with the device. This is the artificial eye from beyond. There are 4 cameras that look into the eye and measure what the surgeon is doing. We need a precision of 1 to 10 micron. That is a 100th or a 10th millimeter to have a sufficient precision for surgery, and that puts very high demands on such a system. Yeah, some examples of our educational solutions. Maybe the most important one is that the simulator measures what you are doing on several parameters. I think it's around 100 parameters that are measured. For example, as I mentioned, the roundness of the rhexis, of this capsular tear, or your time, or the tissue stress, or how you handle the microscope, how long you were in focus with the microscope, how large your tremor is. All those things are measured, are stored in a database, and you can see where you have to improve and where you are already good enough. We have specially designed things for teaching basic skills. The problem is that if you start by doing a very complex task, a real surgical step, then it is very hard to learn all things that are necessary. For example, by manual instrument handling. And this is an example of a task that isolates this bimanual instrument handling skill, and you just have to move each instrument into such a sphere, and if you are doing that and holding both instruments simultaneously into the sphere, you have succeeded, and you can provide you can proceed to the next object. I know that most doctors that are training on our systems don't like these kinds of tasks because they are too far away from real surgery, but they are really helpful when you need to improve on your basic manual skills, much better than if you are doing 100 complex surgical tasks in the simulation or on the patient. We have structured curricula for all the tasks that we have that typically start with some introductions with abstract tasks, then provide easy surgical steps and continue with more complicated surgical steps and complications and complicated cases that we will rarely see as a beginner in the real surgery. We also have we call that cataract challenges. In the cataract case, these are exams that you have to do. They model a real surgery that you have to do in a certain time, and then you get a mark for what you are doing, and your teacher knows where you are standing in your education. Yeah, that shows where our simulators are currently used. As you can see, we have covered, for example, the US almost completely. We have 90% of all residency programs in ophthalmology equipped with our simulations. We have covered large parts of Europe. In England, we have covered, I think, all training programs that are there. And every simulator has a database that collects the training data of all people that are training there. And we are currently connecting all these databases so that we can analyze the training data and improve on the curriculum and make the next step towards standardization. By networking the simulators, we can also do service. We can provide new software on the simulators. Yeah, we can aggregate the data, as I mentioned, and we can provide for the trainees courses that they can access on their computer or on their smartphone, so that they don't need to go to the simulator to learn about the theory that accompanies the surgical education. I have some examples for that. That's the dashboard. When you log in the web, you can see what your last task in the simulation was, what your next theory task will be. You can see how many points you already reached, how far you are in the curriculum. Here's an example for a theory course where you are introduced into cataract surgery. You get tests also to prove that you have read all that was presented there. And which is very interesting, you have a data analysis that compares you either with your class, with the other people at your institution, or even in this case with the AAO, the American Academy of Ophthalmology. All the devices that belong to the AAO are networked, and you can compare the average performance of all users within the AAO in simulation with your own performance, which is, I think, a very motivating thing. There are more than 50 publications on our simulators. They prove dramatic improvements on complication rates, especially on beginners. I think the largest number was 70% within the first 600 surgeries of residents. We have one rather small publication that shows that even experienced surgeons can profit from warm-ups on simulation. For example, when they had a long weekend and before they start their first surgery, do some tasks on simulation. As you can imagine in the clinical routine, that is a bit of theory that an experienced surgeon is doing that, but if he does that, it's measurable that he gets a bit better in his first surgeries. Yeah, as I said, 90% of the programs in the US use simulation. In Denmark, in Copenhagen, to be more precise, surgeons are required to complete the IC curriculum before entering the OR. The same is currently discussed in Great Britain, and that's brand new information. The SFO, the French Society of Ophthalmology, just decided that 10 hours of simulator training on any simulator, IC is the only one, are required before you are allowed to enter the OR. One example of a system, I looked at that on Friday. The Moorfields Eye Hospital is, I think, the largest eye hospital in England who have an IC system. There are 400 users that performed almost 100,000 tasks, which is 100 days of instruments in the eye within the last 7 years, I think. Yeah, that's 2,300 hours of training. So the simulators are in intense use, which of course I liked when I saw this data. The last slide is my favorite situation. That's in our company. That's a cataract lab that we did in cooperation with Alcon, who consisted of, I think, 10 or 12 simulators and one OR machine. The OR machine wasn't used, and the people practiced for 2 days on the simulation. When we started in 2001, this scenario was rather science fiction, and now simulators are applied in a regular basis, either in a large lab or in small setups like in Moorfields, where one simulator sits and all the people are going through this one simulator. Thank you. You're cordially invited to try out the machines so that you can see if I'm right about that. We need around 5 minutes to set up the surgical simulator. So if you have the patience to wait for that, I would be grateful. Thank you.